Olivia sat on the edge of her bed, her phone pressed tightly against her ear. Her heart raced as she spoke, trying to sound confident despite the unease gripping her. "Anita, I'll be coming home tomorrow," she said, her voice trembling slightly. "Finally, I've met someone who deeply loves me after all the heartbreaks I went through." On the other end of the line, Anita's voice lit up with excitement. "Olivia, that's wonderful news," she exclaimed. "I've been praying you'd find someone who truly appreciates you. You deserve this happiness, sis." Olivia forced a small smile, comforted by her sister's enthusiasm. Anita had always been her biggest cheerleader, someone who wanted only the best for her. This support gave Olivia a sliver of hope that her family might accept Steve despite the challenges ahead. "Tell me more about him," Anita continued eagerly. "What's he like? How did you two meet?" Olivia hesitated for a moment before responding. "His name is Steve. He's kind, caring, and incredibly intelligent. We met through a mutual friend, and, Anita, he makes me feel safe and loved in a way I've never felt before." Anita sighed happily. "It sounds like you've found a gem, Olivia. I can't wait to meet him. Does he know you're bringing him home?" "Not yet," Olivia admitted, her voice growing quieter. "There's something you should know, Anita. Steve is disabled. He uses a wheelchair." There was a brief silence on the line, but when Anita spoke again, her tone remained gentle. "That doesn't change anything, Olivia. If he loves you and you love him, that's all that matters. You've been through enough heartbreak to know what you need in your life." Olivia felt a weight lift from her shoulders. Anita's support meant the world to her, especially after the disapproval she had faced from others. "Thank you, Anita. I was so scared to tell you." "You don't have to be scared," Anita reassured her. "Love isn't about perfection. It's about finding someone who completes you. And if Steve is that person, then I'm happy for you." As Olivia ended the call, she felt a newfound sense of courage. With Anita by her side, she was ready to face whatever challenges lay ahead in introducing Steve to the rest of the family. That evening, Olivia sat with Steve, carefully choosing her words as she explained her plan. "Steve, I think it's best if we go and see my sister Anita tomorrow. She's happy for me, and I believe she'll understand us better when she meets you." Steve's brows furrowed slightly. "Olivia, are you sure about this? I think it would be better if you went first, talked to her, and prepared her before I come along." Olivia shook her head firmly, her resolve clear. "Steve, I've already told her about you. She knows everything, including your disability, and she's still supportive. Meeting you will help her see what I see, how amazing you are. I don't want to do this without you." Steve sighed, rubbing his hands together nervously. "It's not that I don't want to meet her, Olivia. I just don't want to be a source of discomfort or conflict for your family. I know how people can be." Olivia reached out, placing her hand gently over his. "Steve, we're in this together. Anita's reaction gave me hope. She's on our side, and I believe she'll stand by us as we navigate the rest of my family. Please, trust me." Steve gazed at her for a moment, his heart softening at her determination. "All right," he finally said with a small smile. "If this is what you want, I'll be there with you." The sun had barely risen when Olivia and Steve set off for Anita's place. Steve, dressed in a neatly pressed blue shirt and black trousers, exuded calm confidence, though Olivia could sense his underlying nervousness. Olivia wore a simple yet elegant floral dress, her hands clutching a small bag as they made their way to Anita's house. The journey was quiet, with Olivia occasionally glancing at Steve to offer a reassuring smile. When they arrived at Anita's home, The bright yellow house with its carefully tended garden seemed to radiate warmth and welcome. Anita greeted them at the door, her arms immediately wrapping around Olivia in a tight hug. "Olivia, you're here!" she exclaimed before turning her attention to Steve. "And you must be Steve," Anita said warmly, extending her hand. "Welcome." Steve hesitated briefly, gauging her reaction, but Anita's kind smile put him at ease. He shook her hand firmly. "Thank you, Anita. It's nice to finally meet you." "Come in, both of you," Anita said, ushering them inside. "I've been looking forward to this." Once inside, Anita offered them some drinks, quickly creating a relaxed atmosphere. She asked Steve about his work, his interests, and how he met Olivia. Steve answered with confidence, occasionally glancing at Olivia, who smiled encouragingly. Anita listened intently, her genuine curiosity and warmth shining through. At one point, she said, "Steve, I can see why Olivia speaks so highly of you. You're kind, smart, and clearly care deeply for her. That's all that matters to me." Steve's relief was palpable, and Olivia felt a wave of gratitude for her sister's open-mindedness. The three of them continued to talk, laughter punctuating their conversation as they shared stories and got to know each other better. As the day went on, Anita turned to Olivia with a thoughtful expression. "You know, sis, if you're this happy and sure about him, then I'm fully behind you. I'll support you when it's time to introduce him to Mom and Dad." Olivia's eyes filled with tears of gratitude. "Thank you, Anita. That means so much to me." Steve reached out and gently squeezed Olivia's hand. For the first time in days, he felt a glimmer of hope that their love could overcome the hurdles ahead. As they left Anita's house that evening, Steve turned to Olivia and said, "I was nervous about today, but now I see why you insisted. Your sister is wonderful. I'm glad we did this together." Olivia smiled, her heart swelling with love and determination. "This is just the beginning, Steve. We'll face whatever comes next together." Anita sat on her couch, her phone clutched in her hand as she debated her next move. She knew the news about Olivia's relationship had to be handled delicately, especially with their parents. After much thought, she decided her father would likely process the situation more calmly than their mother. Taking a deep breath, she dialed his number. "Anita, my daughter, how are you?" Her father, Papa Okafor, answered, his voice warm and familiar. "Papa, I'm fine," Anita replied, trying to steady her voice. "I have something to tell you, although I'm not the right person to be saying this first." Papa Okafor chuckled lightly. "You always know how to stir curiosity. Go on, my dear. I'm listening." Anita hesitated for a moment, then dove in. "Olivia came to visit me today. She brought someone with her, a man she plans to marry." "That's good news," her father said, his tone brightening immediately. "It's about time. I've been praying she'd find someone who truly values her." Anita bit her lip. "Papa, there's something I need to tell you about him. The man, Steve, he's disabled. He uses a wheelchair." The line fell silent. The warmth in her father's voice was replaced with a weighty pause. Anita could almost hear his thoughts racing on the other end. "Disabled?" Papa Okafor finally said, his voice subdued. How did this happen?" Anita quickly explained, her words tumbling out. "Papa, Steve is incredibly intelligent and hardworking. He has a great job and cares deeply for Olivia. He treats her with so much respect and love. But yes, he's physically disabled. He uses a wheelchair to get around." Another pause followed, longer this time. Anita's heart pounded as she waited for her father to speak. Papa Okafor finally muttered, his tone reflective. "This is unexpected, Anita. Many things are running through my mind right now, not because I doubt Olivia's judgment, but because I worry about the challenges they might face. Marriage is not an easy journey, and this adds complexities. Anita felt a pang of worry. Papa, I understand your concerns, but I've met Steve. He's a remarkable man, and Olivia seems truly happy with him. I think he deserves a chance. I don't doubt his character, Anita, Papa said gently. But this is not just about love. Marriage involves families, society, and the practicalities of life. Does Olivia understand what she's choosing? She does, Anita said firmly. She's thought this through, and I believe that if we give him a chance, we'll see what she sees in him. Papa Okafor sighed deeply, the sound heavy with contemplation. I'll speak with your mother about this, Anita. Thank you for letting me know. But Olivia will need to come to us herself. This is her decision, and it's not one to be taken lightly. I understand, Papa, Anita replied. Please, try to keep an open mind when you meet Steve. I always do, my daughter, Papa Okafor said with a faint smile in his voice. Let's see how this unfolds. As Anita hung up the phone, she felt a mixture of relief and worry. She had taken the first step in preparing her parents for Olivia's news, but she knew the journey ahead would be far from easy. That evening, Mr. Okafor sat in his favorite armchair, his mind clouded with thoughts of Olivia and the conversation with Anita. He was deep in contemplation, struggling to find the right words to tell his wife, Grace, about the situation. He knew her temper well and dreaded the reaction his words might provoke. Grace, who had been watching him closely from across the room, noticed his troubled demeanor. What's bothering you like that? She asked, her voice tinged with curiosity and concern. What happened at work? Mr. Okafor hesitated for a moment, then sighed deeply. It's nothing to do with work, he said, his voice quiet. It's about Olivia. Grace frowned, sitting upright in her chair. What about Olivia? Is she all right? She's fine, Mr. Okafor reassured her. In fact, she's more than fine. She's now in a serious relationship, one that will likely lead to marriage. Grace's face softened slightly. That's good news, she said, leaning forward. So, why do you look so worried? Mr. Okafor rubbed his temples before responding. The man she wants to marry is disabled. He's in a wheelchair. The atmosphere in the room shifted immediately. Grace's expression darkened, and her voice rose with incredulity. What did you just say? Disabled? Olivia wants to marry a disabled man? Grace, please, Mr. Okafor said, trying to keep his tone calm. I've been told he's a good man. He's intelligent, hardworking, and deeply cares for Olivia. I trust her judgment. I believe she knows what she's doing. But Grace wasn't listening. She sprang to her feet, her voice growing louder with each word. This is not coming on. Have you forgotten about Mr. Jones? We've already given him our assurance that he could marry Olivia. How will we repay all the gifts and favors he's done for us to secure this union? Grace, we never promised her to Mr. Jones, Mr. Okafor said firmly, though his voice was still measured. We said we would consider it if Olivia was interested. Clearly, she has made her choice, and it's not Mr. Jones. Do you know what you're saying, Okafor? Grace shouted, her hands on her hips. No man will marry Olivia except Mr. Jones. He is rich, respected, and can elevate our family's status. This disabled man will bring nothing but shame to us. Do you want people to laugh at our family? Mr. Okafor rose to his feet, his calm demeanor giving way to frustration. Grace, I will not trade our daughter's happiness for status. Olivia's decision is hers to make. If this man loves her and she loves him, who are we to stand in their way? Grace glared at him, her chest heaving with anger. So you want us to turn our backs on Mr. Jones and everything he's done for us? Do you know what that will cost us? Our reputation, our respect, everything. We will handle that when the time comes, Mr. Okafor said firmly. But I will not force Olivia into a loveless marriage just to appease society or repay favors. That's not the kind of father I am. Grace turned away, her shoulders tense as she muttered under her breath. The room fell into an uneasy silence, the tension hanging heavy in the air. Mr. Okafor sank back into his chair, his thoughts now more troubled than ever. He knew this was only the beginning of a storm that would test their family's unity. The morning sun streamed through the window as Grace sat at the dining table, her phone in hand, her mind racing with thoughts of the conversation she had with her husband the previous night. Unable to contain herself any longer, she dialed Olivia's number. "Hello, Mama," Olivia greeted, her tone warm but cautious. She could sense the tension even before Grace spoke. "Olivia, what is going on?" Grace's voice was sharp, laced with urgency. "Is the news I'm hearing true? Have you really decided to marry a disabled man?" Olivia sighed, bracing herself. "Yes, Mama. His name is Steve, and I love him." "Love?" Grace scoffed. "Do you even know what love means, Olivia? Love isn't just about feelings. It's about stability, respect, and building a future. Do you think a man in a wheelchair can give you that?" "Mama," Olivia interjected, her voice firm but respectful, "Steve has given me more love and respect than I've ever experienced in my life. He's a kind man with a brilliant mind. He has a good job and a heart that truly cares for me." Grace sighed deeply. "Olivia, I wanted to surprise you, but I think knowing this will help you make a better decision. There's a rich man who lives in our neighborhood, Mr. Jones. He's shown interest in marrying you." Olivia's heart sank. "Mama, Mr. Jones, the same man who's old enough to be my father?" "Olivia, listen to me," Grace snapped. "Mr. Jones is rich and influential. He recently gifted us a car. Do you know what that means for our family? Respect, recognition, and security." Olivia was stunned. "Mama, are you telling me you accepted a gift from him in my name, without even asking me?" "Olivia, it was a gesture of goodwill," Grace said defensively. "He's a good man with resources to take care of you and our family." Olivia's voice rose slightly, anger creeping into her tone. "Mama, Mr. Jones is married. Do you want me to be his second wife? Do you want me to marry someone who is my father's age? Have you even thought about what that would mean for my happiness? I am not interested in that marriage." Grace was taken aback, her mouth opening and closing as she tried to find words. "I have chosen Steve," Olivia continued, her voice steady. "He is the man I want to spend my life with, and we will be coming home soon to see you and Papa." Grace sat in stunned silence, the phone still pressed to her ear. She couldn't believe what she was hearing. "Olivia, do you realize what you're saying?" "Yes, Mama," Olivia replied firmly. "I realize exactly what I'm saying. Please, understand that this is my life and my decision." Without waiting for her mother's response, Olivia ended the call, her hands trembling slightly. She felt a mixture of relief and anxiety, knowing she had stood her ground, but also aware of the storm that might follow. Grace, still holding the phone, sat motionless. She couldn't believe her daughter had spoken to her so decisively, rejecting the plans she had carefully orchestrated. Her mind raced with disbelief and anger, struggling to accept that Olivia had chosen a path so far removed from her expectations. After ending the call with her mother, Olivia felt a mix of frustration and determination. She knew she needed to share everything with Steve. She grabbed her bag and made her way to his house, her resolve growing stronger with each step. Steve welcomed her with a warm smile, but his expression quickly turned serious when he saw the look on her face. "Olivia, is everything okay?" he asked, leading her to the couch. Olivia sat down, taking his hands in hers. "Steve, there's something I need to tell you," she began, her voice steady but laced with emotion. She recounted the entire conversation with her mother, from Grace's disbelief about her relationship with Steve to the shocking revelation about Mr. Jones and his gifts. Steve listened intently, his jaw tightening as she spoke. When she finished, she looked into his eyes and said firmly, "Steve, no matter what, I'm going to marry you. This is my life, and I won't let anyone make decisions for me. Not my mother, not Mr. Jones, no one." Steve's eyes softened, and he gave her hands a gentle squeeze. "Olivia, I know this isn't easy for you. I can't thank you enough for standing by me through all this. But are you sure? I don't want you to feel pressured or torn." "I've never been more sure about anything in my life," Olivia said with conviction. "We've come this far together, and I'm not turning back now. In fact, I think we should move our visit to my parents earlier than planned. Let's show them how serious we are." Steve nodded, his confidence growing as he saw the determination in her eyes. "All right," he said. "Let's do this together." That evening, Olivia picked up her phone and called her father. The conversation began light, with Olivia asking about his day, but soon she shifted the focus. "Papa, Steve and I would like to come home sooner than planned," she said. "We want to meet you and Mama and have an honest conversation about our relationship." Her father hesitated for a moment, then said, "When were you thinking of coming?" "Would this weekend work for you and Mama?" Olivia asked. "I want to make sure it's a time when you're both available." Mr. Okafor sighed, his voice tinged with concern but also understanding. "All right, Olivia. This weekend works. We'll be expecting you both." "Thank you, Papa," Olivia said, relief washing over her. "This means a lot to me." As she ended the call, Olivia felt a renewed sense of hope. She turned to Steve and smiled. "It's settled. We're going this weekend." Steve smiled back, pulling her into a gentle hug. "We'll face this together, Olivia, no matter what happens." The day finally arrived for Olivia and Steve to visit her parents. As they drove to the house, Olivia sat quietly, her hands clasped tightly in her lap. Steve noticed her tension and reached out to hold her hand. "It's going to be okay," he said softly, offering her a reassuring smile. "I hope so," Olivia replied, managing a faint smile. When they arrived at her parents' house, Grace came to the door. Her eyes immediately landed on Steve, and though she forced a greeting, her frown betrayed her feelings. "Welcome," she said curtly, stepping aside to let them in. Steve, ever polite, greeted her warmly. "Good afternoon, Ma. Thank you for having me." Grace gave a curt nod, barely meeting his eyes as she led them to the living room. Olivia glanced nervously at Steve, who remained calm and composed. A few minutes later, Mr. Okafor walked into the room. He paused mid-step when he saw Steve, his face lighting up with recognition. "Steve, is that you?" he exclaimed, a wide smile spreading across his face. "Come here, my friend." Olivia and Grace both turned to look at Mr. Okafor in surprise. Steve stood and approached him, shaking his hand warmly. "Sir, it's good to see you again." "What's going on?" Grace asked, her frown deepening. "Yes, Papa," Olivia added, her curiosity piqued. "How do you know Steve?" Mr. Okafor chuckled, gesturing for everyone to sit down. "Let me explain. We met at a recent conference I attended. Steve was one of the keynote speakers that day, and let me tell you, he captivated everyone in the room. His speech was so inspiring that he received multiple awards for his contributions." Olivia's eyes widened in surprise, while Grace's skeptical expression softened slightly. "That's not all," Mr. Okafor continued. "Since then, we've crossed paths at a few other programs. I had no idea he was the man you were seeing, Olivia." Steve smiled humbly. It's an honor to see you again, sir, especially under these circumstances." The revelation seemed to lift the tension in the room. Even Grace, though still cautious, began to study Steve more closely. She couldn't deny how well-spoken and confident he was. His polite demeanor and the respectful way he addressed her husband left a good impression. Throughout the visit, Steve continued to engage both parents in conversation, sharing insights from his career and personal experiences. Grace found herself impressed despite her initial reservations. "You carry yourself very well, Steve," she admitted reluctantly at one point. "I can see why my husband thinks so highly of you." "Thank you, Ma," Steve replied with a gentle smile. "It means a lot to hear that." As the evening wore on, the atmosphere became increasingly relaxed. Grace's initial hostility gave way to cautious warmth, and Olivia felt a spark of hope. By the time they were leaving, Mr. Okafor clapped Steve on the back and said, "Steve, you're welcome in this house anytime. I'm glad Olivia has found someone like you." Even Grace, though not completely convinced, offered a faint smile. "We'll see how things go," she said. "But for now, thank you for visiting." As they drove back, Olivia turned to Steve with a relieved smile. "That went so much better than I expected." Steve chuckled. "I told you we'd get through this together." 12 years had passed since Olivia and Steve's wedding day, and as they sat together on their anniversary, they marveled at the journey they had taken. Their home was now filled with laughter and the joyful energy of their 2 children, a vibrant boy and a curious little girl who adored their parents. Sitting in the living room, a photo album lay open on the coffee table. The pictures told the story of their lives together, their wedding day, their first home, family vacations, and milestones with their children. Steve turned a page and smiled warmly at a photo of Olivia holding their firstborn. "I still can't believe it's been 12 years, Steve said, his voice filled with gratitude. "From all the challenges we faced to where we are now, it's been an incredible journey." Olivia reached for his hand, her eyes shimmering with love. "And I wouldn't change a single moment of it. Despite everything, choosing to love you was the best decision I've ever made." Steve chuckled, his tone light but sincere. "Remember how nervous we were about introducing me to your parents? I thought your mother was never going to come around." Olivia laughed, the memory vivid in her mind. "Mama was definitely a tough one, but now look at her. She dotes on you more than anyone else in the family." Steve nodded, thinking of how Grace had not only accepted him, but grown to deeply respect and care for him over the years. It just goes to show that love and patience can break down any wall. Their son ran into the room, clutching a handmade card. "Happy anniversary, Mom and Dad," he said, handing it to them with a beaming smile. Their daughter followed closely behind, carrying a small tray with 2 glasses of juice. "We made this for you." Olivia and Steve exchanged a look of pride and joy. "Thank you, my loves," Olivia said, pulling them both into a hug. As the children giggled and settled between them on the couch, Steve said, "This is what it's all about, building a life together, supporting each other, and creating a family filled with love." Olivia nodded, her heart full. 12 years ago, people doubted us. They didn't believe we could make it, but here we are, happier than we ever imagined. I have never regretted a single moment of loving you,